G'day, I'm Melody Fluffington.
And I'm Louis, also known as Norspac.
Welcome to the very first episode of our podcast, Elves in the Attic. In this podcast, we're going to talk about a range of subjects that are relevant to our lives as artists, content creators, drug advocates, and lovers.
In this first episode, we're going to talk about how we met on the internet and how our relationship started. We're also going to talk about our introduction to the wonderful world of psychedelics, specifically psilocybin mushrooms. We're still trying to find the flow of the conversation, so we hope it's still an enjoyable talk.
Quick disclaimer, if anything we say about psychedelic drugs interests you, I highly recommend you inform yourself and don't take our word for it.
Yeah, we're not experts. We're also gonna talk about this painting, which is a piece of art that came to life using dice to generate the characters. And we're gonna talk about each and every one of them, our interpretation, and what they mean to us. So without further ado, here's the first episode of Elves in the Attic. Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, ready to talk?
I suppose so.
So, welcome to Elves in the Attic. This is our first episode of a podcast, and we're doing it to, I don't know if spread the word is the right way of saying it, but
One way I would say it might be spread the mycelial network, but that's not going to be understood by anybody. So let's, why are we doing a podcast? And who are we? Probably a good way to get started. I'll let you start.
Well, first, who are we? Because it might be nice to have a little idea of who is talking. So
Yeah, I don't know you at all, and it's at this point it's getting a bit awkward now.
So my name is Louis, and I'm French. I'm 31, and I'm an artist. I do paintings. I read as much as I can, and I try to write a bit too. And this podcast is for me a way to share some of my passions, some of myself, and share it with more than you.
Just me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Melody, and I'm Australian, and I'm 24 years old right now, and I'm transgender. And my main work is porn.
Pornography.
I do that on OnlyFans. And yeah, pretty much I feel like the start of why we wanted to even make a podcast is we have some pretty radical ideas just about life and radical experiences as well when it comes to just what we've been through, just as a couple and as individuals as well.
True.
And this could be a good platform to kind of expand on our ideas, because sometimes I feel like they're just ideas up until there's something real, you know? And also, yeah, just talk.
So I'm French, you're Australian. You didn't start in France.
No.
How did we meet?
Well, we met on the internet,
Exactly.
just like a lot of people these days, I reckon.
We met on a subreddit on Reddit about role-playing, the erotic kind of role-playing. And so
So not like the Dungeons and Dragons nerdy kind.
not really.
No.
Another kind of dungeon.
I see. Yeah. So pretty much when it comes to erotic roleplay and what that means to me is I've been using erotic roleplay since I was pretty young to kind of, express myself and my sexuality. And even before I knew I was transgender, I would roleplay as a woman and kind of just, it was something one of my main ways of sexual expression. And so pretty much it had become just a part of my rhythm. When I get horny, I would go write an ad and say, someone play with me. I want to play this. I want to play that. And so I'd been doing that for ages, and I never really met anyone doing that. Like
anyone in real life?
Yeah, it'd always been like a short-term thing, sometimes maybe over a month or so, and then I'd be like, okay, that was fun. Thank you for that. Bye-bye. Yeah, until I met you.
One day I replied to a prompt and it was pretty intriguing. I was interested, and I tried to make a connection with you.
And you succeeded.
Yeah, you replied the next day, and ever since, well, we've been talking pretty much every day. And after a few months of back and forth and good chemistry, let's say, you flew all the way from Australia to France to meet.
But I mean, there's a little bit in between
Of
flying
course.
to France and the chemistry. I mean, I think it's pretty interesting that our whole relationship was kind of the sex. We got the sex part out of the way. You know, a lot of the time, especially like I mean, I'm not sure how much it's still that way with like Tinder and stuff, but you know, sex ideally is not something you just throw out on the first encounter with someone. You're like, okay, this is what I like. This is what I want from you. Let's go hard. You kind of let that be something that, I don't know, happens when it's ready to happen. We got that out of the way, and I mean, it's not like we went into it looking to be in a relationship.
True.
I mean, a relationship of sorts, but not really what it turned into.
No, it's not like I expected you to come here.
No.
When I messaged you.
It's not like I expected to even know your real name.
True, yeah. Right.
So, I mean, getting that out of the way, it was kind of a pretty good base to know that we're going to mesh on that kind of front. And at the time, I didn't even know I was really into dudes. It was kind of like, maybe. I mean, I kind of see the appeal. And then you kind of came in and was like, oh yeah, I'm into that. So, yeah.
So the basis of our relationship was sex in a lot of ways, but a particular kind of sexual expression, which is BDSM, and a dynamic that goes on with it. And common interest of we were looking for some kind of intensity, I would guess. And we found each other vibing along that way on the more less vanilla and more
kinky.
Yeah, kinky side of things.
So when it comes to BDSM itself, I was pretty much introduced to the idea pretty early as with roleplay as kind of you encounter all the terms and the ideas, the dominance, the masochism, sadism, all that kind of stuff. And so I never really, it was always been an idea in my head and something I had explored through roleplay, but never something I had actually, I never saw myself like submitting to someone and being like, I'm yours, you know, which is kind of what happened pretty early on as well. Once we kind of broke past the roleplay stage and we started talking and actually connecting as individuals, you were like, so you're going to be mine?
Okay. I remember I bought you a collar, which is a
symbol.
A symbol of, maybe not, it's a symbol of a dynamic. Symbol of people.
I guess we saw it as a symbol of ownership. And for me, being all the way on the other side of the world, it was good to have that kind of the physical presence reminder of you on me at some point.
So we talked about BDSM, another big interest of ours that bloomed while we were
still in the early stages.
Yeah, still separated by half the world. Is our interest in psychedelics, our interest in having fun with drugs.
In fact, I believe it was on a truffle trip that you were taking that I decided I would come to France. I was like, all right, well, this guy trips. I want to trip with him. But to do that, got to get there. So, yeah.
So I believe when we met, you were already pretty experienced with psychedelics. You had there is an Australian culture of tripping, of drugs.
For me, when it came to psychedelics, I think it started off on the internet listening to people talk about these experiences, and they kind of sound insane. Like, I remember this one guy, Psych Substance on YouTube, he would do trip reports of MDMA or LSD or mushrooms, and he would talk about, you know, looking in the mirror and breaking through the matrix and seeing the script of reality. And I'm like, I mean, that sounds pretty cool. Like, I would love to experience that, but is it really like that, or is he just hyping it up for the YouTube? And I mean...
And in your experience, is it hype or is it real? Is it something you can experience
I think it's pretty real,
reliably?
but I mean, whenever you tell a story about an experience like this, it's kind of the words aren't always there, so you have to kind of flourish it a bit just to make it like, it's not like you're actually breaking through the matrix, but you might see the code of the universe in front of you, even though you don't understand shit.
You tend to see a bit more than when you're sober.
A lot more than when you're sober.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the seed was planted of wanting to take psychedelic drugs, and then it was just a matter of waiting for the opportunity for it to come into my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that the first psychedelic experience I had was on LSD, and it was really fun. There was kind of a bit of a hiccup on the trip, but it ended up being a really great time.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, I had kind of my I found my supplies and all that. And I tripped a whole bunch. I tripped on mushrooms, on DMT, on LSD, even on cough syrup. At that point, I was just kind of like, if it makes you high, I want it.
It's the exploratory phase.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole period of my life is very marked by like a sense of like, I discovered Narnia. I discovered the magical world on the other side.
I see.
And it was coming from being kind of godless and like nihilistic and thinking that, the world is pain and happiness is just fleeting and
there's no meaning.
there's no
It's
meaning
just
in anything.
The black void.
Yeah.
A little speck of dust in the cosmos,
Yeah.
and we don't mean shit.
And you say a little speck of dust in the cosmos, but all a speck of dust knows is being a speck of dust. It doesn't know the cosmos. But when you trip, it kind of feels like, oh, actually, the speck of dust is the cosmos.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It makes a bit more sense,
Hell yeah.
And so, yeah, pretty much expanded my brain. And I think I went probably a little bit too hard at some point. Before I met you, I was tripping on acid every week. And I kind of see it as I kept killing my ego with the goal of rebuilding myself into the perfect person, like into who I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked up until a point, but I didn't stop. And so I kept on just destroying it. And so I kind of lost myself a little bit, became a little ungrounded with reality.
Mm-hmm.
And my friends even were like having an intervention. They're like, you got to stop taking drugs. And I'm like, I'm cool, dude. I'm cool. And I was cool. I wasn't like completely lost. I still you had to feed myself and clothe myself and shower and have conversations. But I think they got a bit annoyed by every time I was around them. I was like, mushrooms. I love mushrooms. So
I see.
So yeah, I think I tired my friends out with mushrooms and Terence McKenna, which is a name we'll get back to.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Absolutely.
what's your experience with drugs?
Well, I started with psilocybin mushrooms, truffles to be precise, and truffles are a bit different than the actual mushrooms. They are a bit underground. They're a bit more. They were soft. They were small little trips until I took a way too big of a dose after my first couple of truffle trips. I followed Terence McKenna's advice. I took 5 dry grams of mushrooms in a tea, and basically I tripped too hard.
Here's a question. Who's Terence McKenna?
Well, Terence McKenna. So, yeah, okay. Terence McKenna, a huge persona in the psychedelic community, a household name in the trippers.
Yeah.
And he has a bunch of lectures if you're interested. They're all on YouTube. You can find it on Spotify. And this podcast is called Elves in the Attic. And it's a bit of an homage to Terence McKenna. And Terence McKenna is a man who was born in 1946. So right after the World War. I think it's pretty important because just like wine, humans are the product of when they were born, where they were born, and what they experienced in that time and place. And I think so. Terence McKenna was, he contributed greatly to the first wave of psychedelics in the culture, in the modern culture. So in 1970, he went to the Amazon forest with his brother Dennis McKenna. And it was a little expedition of well, these two dudes and others, they went all along.
In fact, I can tell you.
Mhm.
So pretty much Terence McKenna is a man who, after having an incredibly intense 2-week-long trip in the Amazon rainforest, he felt that he was given a purpose in life from this experience to share this experience and maybe discover what it means really by sharing it and getting it into the cultural consciousness so it can be digested and ideas can be thrown around. And after that experience, him and his brother were able to create a method using spore extracts to grow mushrooms at your home. And that's pretty much the main, what he brought to the world. Beyond that, he also did a lot of lectures. And in these lectures, he has such an incredible way of describing the trip. Sometimes, even before I ever tripped on some of these substances, I'd hear him speak about it and I would get like these shivers and I'd be like, oh my God, I believe him. He says it so right. Like, I know that what he's describing is something I can experience. And what he's describing is something pretty incredible. So it definitely gives you a kind of the seed of desire to have this experience. And like, he doesn't shy away from the reality of the experience as well as some of the most intense and terrifying things you can experience, just because something like DMT, which he talks about extensively, and which he talks about elves, specifically in relation to DMT. Something like that, if you smoke it, he says by the third puff, you're in a different dimension. You're no longer in this body on Earth, sitting in a room, smoking on a pipe. You're in the stars in a million pieces, making up the universe. And that's not an easy transition to make between a couple of puffs of a pipe and being the universe. So it kind of feels like, I remember the first time I ever smoked DMT. I remember it felt like everything was speeding up. I was in my friend's bedroom and everything started speeding up like to this pace, which was going incredibly fast. And I could start seeing space, like the space between here and here. I could see it. And I was like, what the hell? And then I was launched through that space and I felt my face starting to like come off in little bits. And like, I was like, I'm not ready. I don't want to go there. And like, it kept going and my face was, and then it slowed down. And my friend was like, you want some more? Nope. I think I've had enough right now.
And so these psychedelic drugs we're talking about, they're all pretty much illegal in our Western culture. When Terence McKenna and his brother came back from the Amazon in 1970, and President Nixon of the USA started the war on drugs basically in 1971. By that time, people were already tripping on LSD. They were selling a hit for $1 on the side of the road as if it was
the hippie
oranges.
movement was in full swing.
Exactly. And the war on drugs was basically designed as a political coup against the hippies and the Americans of color, which were the two demographics that were very inconvenient to Nixon and his political base, and they were all protesting against the war efforts of the USA, especially in Vietnam. And so by associating hippies and all with drugs and banning drugs, the hippies became the enemies of the state, the enemies of the law, basically.
In fact, when he banned these substances, he didn't just ban them in America either. He brought them to, is it the United Nations or something like that? And he made everyone sign it.
Yeah.
Which is pretty immense for when it comes to like the healing power of these substances. And even research was halted when the ban came in.
Yep.
So, imagine how far understanding our own brains could be advanced if that wasn't banned.
Well, it gives me hope for today because more and more research is being done on these substances, and there's hope. We're starting to see the great benefits that they can bring and how we could use them in healing parts of our depression, parts of our
psyche.
Yeah, parts of our psyche. So thanks to Terence McKenna and his brother, I was able, decades later, to grow some psychedelics mushroom in my living room. Just in 2 weeks, all I needed was a little bit of water sprayed into a plastic bag and some patience. And
And voila, mushrooms.
yeah.
Plastic and water.
So after our first harvest, I tried some with my roommate at the time. And I am so, so grateful for the experience because at the time I was very, very much depressed and lost. I was a boy. I was 26 at the time, but I very much was still a boy, lost in this world, not knowing what to do. I was drowning my time and my sorrows in video games and pornography. And the days were just passing by. I was just on my computer, not doing anything. And having a trip showed me basically the error of my ways, and it showed me a way to live my life in a more enjoyable way, in a more real way.
How did it show you that?
Well, the power of a trip is that it will take what you feel in the moment and it will amplify it, depending on the dosage, by tenfold, hundredfold. It's pretty strong. And when you amplify it, when you take a big magnifying glass on your life and you spend hours just not doing anything else but introspection, wondering where you are, what you do, what's your purpose, you can see what your habits will give you, will yield for you, what your activities do for you, and you can expand that, you can extrapolate basically on your life. What if I continue to do this thing for 10 years, for 20 years? What will it give me? And the answer was that I was going nowhere. I was not doing anything. I could live my whole life just eating junk food, playing video games, and fapping myself to sleep. It was terrible. I was so lonely.
And you weren't happy to start with.
No.
So when
not
you
at
saw
all.
the future extrapolated, you were like, so I could stay not happy. Or...
Or I can change. And that was the whole message of that I needed to hear. It was that the power to change is in your hands. And really, it helped me. I needed to hear that. I needed to hear that I had power over my own life, over my own destiny. And I needed to take that opportunity and drive myself somewhere, do something of myself, of my life. And today, after discovering these fantastic little trips, little fungis, little drugs, I'm so grateful. Like, I want to share the message. I want to share the love. I want to spread it because it really feels like they helped me so, so much. I want to help others. And when I say that, I don't mean that I have the solution for you to fix your life, but I know of a way for you to know by yourself what would be good for you.
I don't think even the mushrooms have a solution. It just shows you, it gives you a kind of compass. It says, this is the right way, this is the wrong way. It doesn't know, well, like, what steps do you take to go that direction? It doesn't really give you the answer exactly.
It's not a magic potion to make your life good, like straight up, but it shows you, like, it's a tool basically
But
to
it's
show
also
you
how it's used as well, because some people might take these substances purely recreationally. They're not looking to heal themselves or have a deep trip where they face their demons. They're just trying to, feel a bit drunk and whoa, the roof is moving. But if done with the right intention and the right mindset,
the right set and setting. There definitely is a difference between doing it as a party drug, where all you want to do is giggle, and doing it seriously with respect to the potential that they hold, and basically going at it seriously with intent. A lot depends as well on the dosage, but the right setting, meaning that if you're surrounded by people with conflicting vibes, and only half of the people in the room are taking mushrooms and the other are still
Drinking.
sober, or like doing other drugs even, like alcohol, cocaine, whatever the party is fueled by. It's gonna feel very conflictual, because while some other will be very calm and trying to appreciate the moment, others will be driving the party straight to hell, straight into let's blast loud music and fuck the world and all of that. It's very different vibes. But if you're doing it with your loved ones, with your tiny community, and you're doing it in a proper set and setting, like one of the great ways of making sure that your trip is gonna go as well as it can be is you do it in a safe place. You do it, well, for your first time, I wouldn't recommend it in nature, but it can be done too.
If you have a safe place in nature, it can
Yeah,
be
if you have-
arranged.
if you have
Us
a
living in a
garden.
city,
Mhm.
we don't really have a
Exactly.
comfortable place in nature where we can, go inside if we need to, and then go right outside if we want to be outside. It's
Yeah,
more of an
I know.
adventure to get there. We've gone outside on trips gone outside during trips, and it's been kind of a pretty wild adventure. Even
Yeah.
just getting through the stairway of the apartment, it's
Right.
like, whoa, whoa.
And so, how to prepare for a safe and nice little trip? I would say one of the best ways is to make sure the place you are is clean, like you and
I
other
think
orderly.
also know what the heck you're doing.
Oh yeah,
Like
of
research the
course,
actual
of course.
experience, like find out, what to expect to some degree. I mean, someone will be able to tell you so many words what a trip is, but until you're experiencing it, you're not going to actually know just what that is. And so it's good to have an idea of the kind of things you could encounter, because sometimes, someone might go mushrooms, you giggle, you smile, you see the world in a new light. But in fact, when you take them, you face like past trauma, and you have to like cry it out and like come out the other side of it having like revisited something that was actually really, really difficult. Even though it might be a healing experience, it's not always going to be, just a happy, fun time where the world suddenly looks all right. So it's good to know just the range of experiences you could possibly have on the substance, the kind of dose that you're going to give yourself, and what that means in relation to the effects it'll have on you as well. And so I think the most important thing ever is just knowing what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, doing your research.
Yeah. And then beyond that, if you've done your research, I'm sure you'll hear the words set and setting. And set is mindset. So you need to be in if you're feeling really on the edge, like you're not sure if you'll be able to make it till tomorrow, and you take these mushrooms, they might show you what not making it till tomorrow looks like, and maybe that'll appeal to you. And so if you're not in a good headspace, you can go crazy on these kind of experiences and do things that you wouldn't normally do if you were sober.
And when we say go crazy on these, aside from a very few, very rare cases of people who already are psychotic and already have mental issues.
The craziness is typically confined to the trip
Yeah,
experience.
exactly. It's
Once
not
you-
gonna last forever. It's not gonna leave lasting marks. It's really in the instant, and 6 hours after you took it, you'll be
Something
back
that's
to
kind of
normal.
been calming for me every time I've had a trip that was a bit difficult is I knew that I would go to sleep at the end of the day and I'd wake up into sobriety the next one. So as long as I could get through whatever I'm getting through, I know I'll be back to some kind of baseline. And it's something that's an important thing to hold on to. And maybe on your first trip, you don't actually have that assurance, because sometimes you go into a trip and you feel like you just got on the timeline of infinity, and you might be like this forever. It feels that way. It feels very strongly like, is this how it is now?
Is this my life now?
Yeah. And it's a big thing to kind of wrap your head around. But it's good to know that no matter how deep and far you go, you'll be back to earth eventually.
Yeah. Even Terence and Dennis McKenna, who in the Amazon forest took a load of mushroom. I cannot imagine the quantities. They even themselves do not know because they were just kind of shoving them in their mouth without weighing them. Even them, with the huge dosage they took, it lasted about 2 weeks. And after that, they were relatively back to normal.
But Terrence always had he needed to share the fact that he left this earth and he met the aliens and they gave him a message. Yeah.
We talked about the mindset. The way you approach the trip is gonna change a lot the trip itself. And there is also setting. And setting is your environment and what surrounds you. So if you're among loved ones, if the room that you are in is clean, there is nice cushions to lay down and take it really chill.
Your favorite album.
Yeah.
To listen to.
It's gonna go okay. Also, have some water.
Yeah.
Have some water. I've seen trips where I was parched without knowing it, and I was feeling awful. And then I had a sip of water, and all of a sudden it felt like a huge breath of fresh air, and all my body needed was a bit of water, and all was good now.
And the signals get a bit mixed up when you're tripping that hard.
Oh, yeah.
Thirst might just be like, am I dying?
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, it's pretty easy for most signals to kind of be interpreted like, am I dying? But typically, most of the time, you're not.
So these substances we're talking about, mostly mushroom and LSD, a bit of MDMA as well is a psychedelic, and cannabis can be used as a psychedelic too. But mushrooms and LSD, we're calling them hallucinogenic drugs.
Or psychedelic drugs.
Or psychedelics, but the hallucination parts are not things that do not exist, like physically popping into the room. You're not gonna see a pink elephant like straight there. It's more gonna be like you see something as if you've never seen it before. And it carries that novelty. And you're gonna wonder if it's even real, because it's like, I've seen this cup 1,000 times before, and yet I've never seen it. So,
and when you listen to music as well, it feels the same way. It's like, this is my favorite song. I've listened to it thousands of times, and then you listen to it once while tripping and you go, wait a minute, was it always like that? Yeah.
So what are some of your favorite musics and album to listen to during a trip?
Wow. It's always changing, I feel like. At this point, every new trip, I'll try and listen to something new. But when it comes
some of the classics.
Yeah. I feel like every person who's done LSD has heard or done it's kind of an initiation into being a psychonaut, is to take acid and listen to Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. It's kind of, I remember I did it, and from that point on, every time I initiated a friend into psychedelics, I would be like, okay, here's the experience. They'd lay back, they'd listen to the music, they'd come out of it like, I think I get it. I think I get it. And so I remember the first time I ever did that, I remember feeling like the whole world was being explained to me. From start to finish, from being a baby to being on your deathbed. Everything was being explained. And when the Great Gig in the Sky plays and the woman screams, it's like, you feel every kind of emotion that could be associated with the way she's crying, you know? It's pretty incredible. And so in 45 minutes the album length is, you experience life in its entirety. And so that's pretty intense. And then you come out of it, you've just had that experience, you're still tripping.
Yeah.
And you're not even ready to digest the experience yet. You're like, okay, where do I go from here?
The comeback to reality, like, or at least going from an album, going from music to removing that and going into silence feels very sharp. I remember my first trip where the trip where I first listened to Dark Side of the Moon, it was not my first trip, but I had chosen a pretty strong dosage. I did what we call mushroom huasca, which is I took a little inhibitor right before I took the mushroom, which it disabled some enzymes who digest the mushroom a bit too aggressively in the stomach. And therefore, when you take the mushroom, it's not nearly as attacked by your digestive system, and you trip harder, you trip
It's also to be
deeper.
noted that don't do this unless you know exactly what the
Yeah,
heck you're
of
doing, because
course,
there are
of
some serious
course.
dangers involved with taking the sudden inhibitor.
You gotta be on a certain special diet because you are tuning your digestive system so that it stops working on certain ingredients.
And if it doesn't work to digest some certain things, you can have high levels of toxic stuff in your blood, which might literally end you up in hospital. So, yeah.
Be
When it comes
safe.
to, yeah. But yeah, you had this experience.
Yeah, and I did my research, and what I did was I was sitting on my bed. I had the headphones with Dark Side of the Moon on my head, and the hallucinations, the experience, the visual experience is most felt when you close your eyes. When you have your eyelids shut, your mind basically projects itself onto your eyelids, kind of like a cinema projector. Put the image onto the screen, and then you look at what your mind creates and how it reacts to the music that you're listening to. And it was a very strong dosage. So I was basically, I was melting on my bed, and I had my back against the wall, and I couldn't, for the life of me, do the difference between my back and the wall. I was just like melting down and experiencing it. And it was one of the most poignant trip. It really took me for a ride. I remember seeing like almost a rebirth, like as if life was being explained to me. And it's very hard to describe this kind of experiences with little mouth noises. So I'm not sure I can.
I think the best way to kind of describe this kind of experience would be first listen to Dark Side of the Moon, then listen to it on Psychedelic, and then the experience is kind of described.
So yeah, if you want a trip, do your research. Really, listen to some
Terrence McKenna.
podcasts. Listen to Paul Stamets, Terrence McKenna. Read some books. Inform yourself.
There's some good
And
websites as well.
Start with low dosage. don't full on dive into the depth.
Even if your friends say that you could take any drug and you're totally good, I'm totally good.
Yeah,
I did a
no.
bunch of cocaine and I was having a great night. Yeah, well, it's not the same.
No. These substances, these experiences are to be
Respected.
wholeheartedly respected. So I mentioned earlier that I'm an artist. We can see a bit of a painting named Bambuya there. So I painted a piece called Rainbow Road, and there it is.
Magic is so strong, it totally changed my clothing, my hairstyle. No, not my hairstyle. That's the one thing that
My
stayed the
hairstyle.
same. Tell me all about this painting. Tell me how it started.
It started as a white page, as always. And as an artist, you're always faced with having some kind of vision, an image in your mind that you're trying to transcribe into reality. And the black beast of the artist is the white page. It's literally when you're trying to put infinity onto a small piece of paper. It's trying to transcribe your vision into colorful doodles. And by the means of pen and paper and brushes and colors, you can put a lot of yourself, a lot of meaning, a lot of your conscious and unconscious thoughts as art on paper. So this is Rainbow Road, And the name came way later. It actually started as I was really unsure what to do. So I picked up a few dice and I attributed each die to a characteristic of a character. So I had one die for the colors, all the colors of the rainbow. So one was red, two was orange, and yellow, green, blue, purple. Another die was the number of eyes. This is a bit fun. It's a little trippy. Eyes everywhere. It's really, it reminds me of the closed eye visuals.
Even the open eye visuals.
Even, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Another die was the size of them. So if I rolled a 1, it was a tiny character, like this one, for example. And if I rolled a 6, it was one of the big ones. And the last die was a bit of a wild one. It was the alignment, and it was a mood. So from good to bad, from light to dark, from if you pick up on the D&D alignment chart, it's like loyal good on one side and chaotic evil on the other.
So 1 would be angel elf per se,
Yeah.
and 6 might be a this tentacle person down the bottom.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty much.
I see.
Because I put a lot of myself in these little characters, because that's what you do when you draw from imagination and not from a reference. Well, I put a lot of my moods, my intentions, and every little aspect of my personality into these characters. So if I roll the 1, it's really like I bond with the tiny doodle of the character as this is what's almost perfect within me. This is what is me at my most angelical, at my most, how do I say?
So each of these characters is a representation of you then?
I think so. Not necessarily the whole of me, but I see myself in each and every one of them. And each and every one is an aspect of me. It's as if my personality was fragmented, and each of these little fragments was a character. So the basic process was I would roll all of the dice at the same time. I would note the characteristic on a little sheet of paper, and then I would draw the elf. And it started at just the elves. The decor, tying it all together, came way after. It started as 20 elves, completely random, without any
concept of the larger picture.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Tiny doodles on a big white page.
I remember for the longest time, you would just add 1 every now and then. And it was over months I saw the page slowly fill up with characters that didn't really seem to relate to each other. But they were there, not colored in. They still had their color associated with them, but they were still black and white on the page. And I remember when you finished all the characters and you said it was almost time to start working on the background, I saw it. I'm like, I see it like this. And what I saw was nothing like what it turned out to be.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Almost every character has share some of the same features. So they all have some kind of hat, except this one is a particular one. It doesn't have a giant nose as all of the others do. And I usually have a big round nose, a mustache, and a pointy hat. Doing drugs, having fun.
If I remember correctly, this one there, the fact that it was so different to the rest of them kind of marked that it was time to stop drawing characters and start drawing the piece in its entirety.
I had explored the basic concepts of these little elves, and this was the last character that I put in there, and it already felt so much more different than the others. It's
from the time in which you started one elf to finishing with this elf, a good 6 months has passed.
No.
I believe so.
It was more like 3.
More than that.
Well, I'm not sure we should argue about that right now.
My point is, time has passed.
Yeah.
A lot of time has passed between starting one and finishing one.
Yeah.
And so, as you can tell from the style of one to another, it evolved.
I would say we can go from left to right and start with this guy. His green has only one eye. He's quite big. It was a 6. The alignment was pretty much in the middle. It was a 3 or 4, if I believe.
He's singing the song, which kind of seems to lead into the Rainbow Road. So I kind of interpret that to mean like playing the song of life, you know? And it kind of comes from the side which is very nature, wild. I mean, this side to me, it kind of seems like the raw nature before it turns into civilization a bit on this side, you know? The guy that's sung into existence.
Damn right. It's a good interpretation. It's playing the flute. Its mouth is the mouth of the flute. And I don't know if it sounds too vulgar or not, but it's a bit like a woman. Like, depending on which holes you plug, it makes a different sound. That's the flute.
Okay. Pretty sure men are the same way, you know?
Of course, of course. And so the one big eye, it's like, how do I say? It's one perspective. It's the whole seeing. And it's tied to the tree right next to it with the snake getting out of it. And of course, the snake, the tree, and the apple right next to it. It's one of the oldest stories, really. It's Adam and Eve. And we have the scarecrow next to it.
The scarecrow.
Not the
totem?
scarecrow, the crow. Oh, it's just a bird because I love drawing birds. It's right next as well to a totem. And this totem has, little duck. Well, they're naked. They're a bit like the Native Americans in their little teepees. It reminds me a lot. It's tied to memory of when I went to Canada into the Museum of American History, I believe, in Ottawa. And there was these huge totems and these huge habitations that were really old and beautifully sculpted. And that felt quite in touch with nature. So all the shamanic traditions of nature are put onto this elf.
So in this painting, I guess the ducks are kind of humanity in a weird way, and the
I would
elves
say
are
so.
kind of more like gods or, you know, archetypes. Or
If you know about polytheism, like the pantheon of the ancient Egypt or even the Romans and the Greeks, all of that meant mythology as psychology. And these gods were all somehow archetypes of the human psyche. You had the god of war, the god of wrath, and it was what you embody when wrath takes you and acts through you. And you had like Poseidon, god of the sea. And if you are living by the sea, if you're on a boat, if you are fishing, that's what you're interacting with. That's what makes sense to you. And so these little elves are aspects of the human psyche in some sense, of mine, that are pushed to some kind of extreme to magnify a bit of my personality.
and so this one would be to represent nature and what it means to you, and how it is in contact with the origins of your very being as a human.
Yeah, exactly.
I see that.
Exactly.
What are these guys?
They're a bit trippy because they're kind of the elves that follows you during your life. They're just seeing a human on the road having all of these experiences, and it's almost like watching a TV show for them. And they're like watching all of that going along the road with them. And because they're not humans, their time for them is meaningless. It's fun to watch.
So they're the observers of your life, the cosmic observers.
Oh, pretty much.
And so speaking of cosmic, this guy,
Yeah.
which if I believe correctly is a 666.
Yeah.
All right. So when I see him, I guess he definitely resembles death in a way with the big skull on his nose, but in the same way, the mystery of death and what is afterwards, what is beyond our capacity of knowing. And so when I see that we've connected to space and the stars, it's kind of the mystery of life beyond us.
Yeah.
You know? That's what I see in that.
Yeah. To me, that's the unknown. It's got wings, and it has a big skull right in its face. It's the big dragon. It's death. It's fear as well. Fear of the unknown. It's everything we do not know about, and everything that we fear, really. It's got a bunch of eyes, and it's not to be messed with, but at the same time, it's got really soft features. You can see the animal on the left and the beast like on the right. The big eye of the cyclop near its where its crotch would be, I guess. Also is a face within there because there is a tiny mouth right below it and tentacles sprawling from it. This eye is right between two types of mushrooms. On the right is Amanita muscaria, the red top, white dotted famous mushroom that we all know of. And on the left is more of a psilocybin cubensis. I usually put blue on the stalk to show about, well, the psilocybin, which gets blue when it bruises in contact with oxygen, and the cap is golden. It's like the golden teachers. This unknown is also a representation of mother mushroom, what we don't know about it, because there is far more we do not know about those than we do. So
Sure.
it represents that too.
It's true that when you say he has soft features, it's not like he's a scary looking elf specifically. Like he might be the death and the mystery, but it's also someone which if he came and knocked on the door, I'd be like, oh, who's this guy? You know? If any of these guys came and knocked on my door, I'd pretty much be like, oh, who's this guy?
Yeah, of course. I talk about fear because it is what comes to my mind when faced with the unknown. Like I was not grown to appreciate the unknown. It was more a source of anxiety. But that's because I grew up a bit sheltered, and that's the result of it.
Shall we talk about this guy?
And why not? Why not?
The meditating elf.
It's got 6 eyes. The main color is orange, and it's rather small. Pretty much a hippie. I think it was a 2 on the alignment chart.
I think, part of meditating is being mindful, and the fact that he's sitting right next to the road, watching it all happen. When life is happening, you're living in the past, you're living in the future, you're moving through the present, and being mindful is just being in the moment, watching it happen without really worrying about what's coming or stressing or mourning what's been. It's just being mindful. And I think it's very well represented with the path of life happening before it as it just watches without much feeling.
It's one of the only ones, I believe, or the only one that is sitting. It's sitting and it's in this position of meditation. It's really calm. Like it has a bright smile and all eyes opened. And that's clearly some kind of meditative state. And it's also the only one sporting a nice little green joint and a little love heart coming out of the smoke. It's part of my love of cannabis and how it impacts some of the trips too.
I also feel like from observing you and how you consume cannabis definitely puts you in a state of mindfulness.
Yeah.
Some days you'll be worrying about what's to come, or you'll be feeling like you haven't done enough, and then you'll smoke some weed, look at your life, and be like, hey, I made it this far. I think I'll make it further.
It quiets down the anxiety, existential dread, allows me to take a step back and be like, not staring at my problems, like right in the face, and be a bit more detached from them. That's really useful.
This guy's problems are happening right there, and he doesn't feel doesn't feel anything. Just feels peace.
I guess we could talk about this one next.
The rudest elf.
Sexy little beast.
You think it's sexy?
Well, there's a bit of that in there. I mean,
4 boobs. That's all it takes to get me going.
It's got chin boobs.
Chin boobs.
Yeah.
We've all heard of butt chin. But have we heard of boob chin?
So what do you think about it?
Pretty much to me, it is vulgarity in a weird way. It's got the upside down cross. It's given the finger. It's got tentacle for a penis and goat's hoofs on its feet.
Yep.
It's just everything that you told was perverted in a weird way.
It's, in a sense, it's a mix of wrongness. Like nothing is ever truly wrong, but It's what the adults tell you is wrong when you grow up.
Tentacles? None of that.
Well, the tentacles, everyone will know. It's like
A reference.
it's been perverted by hentai. It's like the tentacle is like some kind
know
of
where that's going.
representation. Yeah, it's. I mean, this is a cute painting, right?
Yeah.
There's not that much penis involved, but if I put a tentacle there, you can get that meaning without me having to draw a big cock. Like it's.
I see.
So yeah, it's kind of a kinky elf. It's got horns. It's got handcuffs. It's strangling a little puppy with another, not a puppy, a bunny with a tentacle. And the bunny has a gag on. Yeah, it's a bit kinky. It doesn't have a beard, but it does have a mustache. And we all know what that means.
It's the meme of, I guess, deviant sexuality in a weird way.
A bit like that. Yeah, it represents sexuality, what's wrong with it, and therefore it becomes fun.
When you use the word wrong, you kind of mean taboo.
Yeah. It's wrong is probably not the right word to use, but what's culturally frowned upon? Yeah, taboo. Yeah, exactly. And what's next to it? This guy. It's got 3 eyes, I believe.
A big halo in contrast to the demon horns on the other guy. In many ways, it feels like they're a pair facing off against each other.
Pretty much. If the one on the left, the one that is yellow and represents kings, is about some kind of the beast inside, about like the call of sexual perversion, sexual drive, aggression. On the counter side, there is discipline. There is the civilized person that learned how to control that. They go hand in hand together, because if you're just a beast and you're not civilized, well, you're gonna die on the stake. Like, do so much wrong that eventually the universe will catch up with you and you're gonna die. But if you're all disciplined, all cold, and you don't have...
You won't die.
Yeah, you won't die, but you won't do anything. You won't interact. You will just stay in your corner and be a cute little puppy, and that's all. So in order to make magic happen, which is the genie, you need to have both sides of the coin, which is the kinky drive, the sexual aggression side, and the ability to control it, and the ability to be disciplined about it, to know when to wield it, and to be able to wield it.
I guess that ties into BDSM and all that.
Yeah.
It's kind of the responsible way to deal with sexuality that could be even possibly dangerous.
Yeah, some kind of thoughts in your head, like urges. If you let them flourish in your head without ever getting on top of them, controlling them, like, it's gonna go beyond you, and you're gonna end up as some kind of aggressor. Like
a tool to your desires.
Exactly.
Instead of the desires being a tool for you.
Exactly. So you gotta take control and be disciplined, and be a master of your own desires. So the genie between the two, going from the lamp, it's kind of like magic. Aside from the road, aside from a few details here and there, it's the one that's most connected to the rainbow in some sense.
He's under the rainbow and the rain.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I guess, if we're talking about the connection to the two of them, he feels both the rain that creates the rainbow and the beauty of the rainbow after the fact. It's like the necessity for rain to see the beauty of the rainbow. Yeah.
So this painting talks a lot about mushrooms. And back in the way ancient days, like 10,000 years ago, some of the myths that talked about mushroom they were calling the sacred mushroom the sons of thunder. And that's literally where the image of God with a big white beard and throwing thunder comes from. Because the Greeks and the Romans took that old image and made it Zeus, the
And how does
top
this relate
god.
to mushrooms?
Because at the time they didn't understand spores, and they didn't know where the mushrooms came from. So they saw something in the forest that after rain and thunder grew overnight into mushrooms, into something, into a fruit that you could take and have the experience of divinity. And so, because they associated these two, like the rain came to make the mushroom grow because the mushroom needs a lot of water.
Mm-hmm.
They were calling the mushroom the sons of thunder. And so, this little genie, it's the magic of mushrooms. It's also the magic of the rainbow. It's the magic of sexuality, in a sense, because the rainbow is these days a symbol of sexual freedom. We have on one side the kink, on the other the discipline, and in between the two there's the magic. This genie, this magic, it's kind of like the power of fertility almost that's bloomed by the psychedelic experience of magic mushroom. I don't know if it makes that
I'm not
much
sure I
sense.
understand completely, honestly.
Yeah.
This guy doing a beautiful dance and kicking an angel out of the sky.
What's your impression?
Well, once again, I see mushrooms straight away in his head. So he seems to have taken a
5 of them.
big dose of mushrooms, dancing on his toes in front of an audience. I guess it's like the joy of motion elf.
Yeah, the dancer.
Yeah.
Dance is a vertical expression of a horizontal intention.
What does that mean?
Well, it means, like, what's a horizontal intention? That means sex.
Okay. But you
And
can have that
dance-
standing up. Okay.
But
Sex for me is not simply laying down.
of course. But that's kind of what I mean. That's why all of these legs is part of the rainbow too. There's hardly anything sexier than someone who dances like nobody's watching. Eyes closed, just himself dancing amongst the clouds, among the stars, listening to dope-ass music, as we can see with the duck shredding a guitar next to it. That's really the power of the dancer.
But dance is also, you say, nothing sexier than. But I feel like sex, like being sexy is almost an intention. But when you dance, it's just something that happens. Music
Of
grips
course.
you and you move. It's
But there's a powerful attraction behind.
of course, seeing someone feeling it,
Yeah, exactly.
feeling the vibe.
When you drop the intention of seducing, you become like seductive. Like in some sense, it works that way. If you you can feel it if someone is trying to
Dance
make
for
you feel something. But when you just feel it yourself, you do it, people just kind of resonate with the love that you are showing to yourself. And they want some of that.
So part of dancing is loving yourself.
I think so.
And all these people are seeing it and saying, so sexy, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good dance.
Good dance. I extra like the
Peacocking.
part where they kick the angel out of the sky.
This whole region, one of the most light region near the sun, near the church. I put all of the best, it just happened that way. I had a die to dictate where each and every one of the characters would land on the page. And they all landed, the angelical ones, in this area. So it was really easy to make it a
Heavenly.
theme. Yeah.
You got paradise where they're playing the music from the rooftops and flying with their harps and falling out of the sky, watching a person dance.
So I want to talk a bit about this one.
The cutest elf.
Yeah, what do you see about him?
It's just cute. That's like the main gist I take away from him. He's
Cute.
He's rubbing his hands together. He's praying maybe because he's right under the church as well. Yeah, he's standing on the world, it looks like.
I don't know how right I am to put this tag on him, but
It's your painting.
yeah, to me, I always named him the martyr because
Doesn't look anything like Jesus.
in some way its eyes are closed, but the eyelids are showing something still.
I always thought that these were his cheeks and that these were his eyes.
Yeah, there's more eyes on top of the eyes, basically. But yeah, you can see the eyelashes here, and the eyes are yellow on the outside, and the iris, the pupil, is bright yellow. And it's kind of an illustration of closed-eye visuals. In his hat, there's an arrow going right through it with a heart. And that's kind of the sting of love, the Cupid's arrow lodged inside of you. It's just reflecting on that, on the power of love, while also not necessarily suffering, but life is a bit of that. Life is some suffering.
Maybe he loves the world so much that he feels its suffering empathetically like that.
It's standing on the globe
Mm-hmm.
as a way of saying that it's bigger than the world. And that's also part of the suffering. It's part of the some of the inflation of the ego, thinking that you're above all that. It can be a trap of some of the psychedelic experience, thinking that you have, like, before your ego dies in a strong trip, you go through stages of everything is being put onto your shoulders, onto yourself, and you have to accept that, and you have the deep desire of changing, of righting all the wrongs that you perceive in the world.
It's the elf that wants to right the wrong.
In some sense, you gotta accept
Of course.
the necessity of suffering in the world. You can't have a perfect world. So
And
yeah.
even then, people are still gonna have diarrhea and constipation. It's not like you can get rid of that. It's suffering. It happens. It'll happen to all of us.
La, la. Yeah, pretty much.
And maybe he's got it.
Maybe. Next to it, that's the angels. They're just chill, happy to live life, peaceful and blessed, surrounded by little flowers, in the sun, basking in the glory of what it is to be alive and conscious.
Seem to be kind of looking over this guy's shoulders almost.
The only other elf than nature, which is green, it's kind of the scientist. It's the analytical mind that studies the phenomena of magic mushrooms. It's surrounded by the stars and it's trying to connect the dots. It's association, really. I made it a little bit old to show some wisdom in a sense. There is some of his fingers feels like volcanoes, like ancient beaks, and there is even a dinosaur here. And all of those tells me about how ancient the mushrooms are. And it's got on top of his head, it's intently looking at the mushroom, of course, but on top of its head, it's got some kind of telescope representing almost a kind of scientific approach to studying these. Understand the richness, the beauty, the complexity of the experience. On one leg, it's standing on a Greco-Roman column. To me, that represents the basis on which our modern civilization is based on, because we didn't pop like this in a vacuum. We have roots going down in history. And these roots, at least for the world I come from, we have roots in the Greeks, in the Romans. You can still see some Roman roads going around the forest. It's the influence that they have on us without us being aware of it is insane. It's standing on one leg on the shoulders of these giants, and on the other, it's standing on a pile of books. And books represent knowledge.
That came from the minds of other ducks.
Yeah, humans, of course, of course. I put some names in there as a bit of a tribute, a bit of an homage to the people that helped me construct a worldview that wasn't as uneducated as before. It's really hard to symbolize knowledge just with like a little doodle. So I made books, but that doesn't mean that all of these people. There is Rogan in this in this pile of books. I don't think Joe Rogan ever wrote a book.
And if you did, you didn't read it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But through him, I found a tremendous amount of knowledge, and he brought me to a lot of others, like Paul Stamets, who introduced psilocybin mushrooms in my life. And because of that, I'm so grateful. Like, thank God for this human. It's beautiful. There is also Carl Jung, Jordan Peterson, and Terence McKenna. And these are hugely important to to trying to construct a worldview.
Stamets and McKenna are really the mushroom side of things.
Yeah.
One being the more analytical, scientific mushroom man,
Mhm.
and the other being the off in Wonderland. What is this experience? Magic, elves, kind of mushroom man. And then Joe Rogan and Jung, I guess, modern psychology and trying to understand ourselves and our archetypes and where we fit in the world, I guess.
Jorgen and Jung.
Not Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson and
Yeah,
Jung. Joe Rogan, he's just a guy who talks to guys.
But like, Joe Rogan influenced this because, well, we're doing a podcast right now. We're talking into microphones. Without him, I don't think I would ever have launched this own podcast. Influence in there for sure. Carl Jung, it's really about how he thought and developed the concept of archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that this painting, all of these little characters are tiny fragments of my psyche magnified onto paper, that's really a thought I could not have without Carl Jung doing all the work, all the psychological analysis before that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are not ideas that I invented. I merely borrowed them to try to explain what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And Jordan Peterson, well, that guy is like...
He's the dad you never had.
He's a modern father that we all fucking crave for. He's the voice of reason and discipline when you seriously need it. He helped me go from the pile of ashes and garbage that was my life into cleaning up my room and organizing my life and making something of myself. So thank God for him too.
And on all of that, you've got mushrooms, which is your thing.
Not my... Well, mushroom is everyone's thing.
Yeah, but you've claimed it as a thing that you're setting your mind to study on off the back of these guys.
Right.
Moving on.
Yeah. This little elf, which is red, orange.
Looks like orange to me.
Yeah, it's got a huge Amanita muscaria on its head. And it's downing a whole pint
of rainbow.
Yeah. What do you think about him? What's your first thoughts?
I feel like the rainbow is going to get him high.
Yeah, there's a lot
and he
of
knows
that.
it.
Oh, yeah.
He's expanding his mind with the arrows that are going in all directions, I guess.
Mm-hmm. This one, it represents some of the guts that you need to have in order to down a drink that you know is going to put you through the ringer for like hours. It's a bit of an attitude to have, a fearless mind, a kind of let's go, let's just do it. It's courage, psychedelic courage. It's also a testament to how interesting these trips are, how interesting these substances are to alter your mind and to expand your consciousness. Because
honestly, I would not drink a cup of that stuff if it didn't have an effect that I wanted to go through.
Right.
Because it's disgusting.
The taste is horrendous.
Yeah.
And I feel like the more you trip, the worse it tastes.
Yeah, because you know that your body kind of like has the response like, are you going to poison me again? I don't want it. And you're like, I do want it. I've made the choice. And your body's like, no, I don't want it.
Mm-hmm. There is this corner of elves to talk about. Mm-hmm. I think we can start with this little blue one.
To me, he is the frantic addict.
Yeah.
That always needs to occupy himself with something, be it his telephone in one hand, or caffeine in the other, or whatever. It's just that he can't sit still and appreciate the music going on around him. He's always focused on doing something. In fact, that's probably doing him more harm than good, with thunder coming out of his head and all that.
You're right you're spot on when you talk about addiction, because that's clearly what I see in there too. It's got many arms around, so there's a bit of a hyperactivity going on. There is a fork, so it's like some kind of gluttony, addiction to foods, and
he's trying to cope with everything by going everywhere other than what's happening.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. It's got a phone. It's also have a cup of coffee. The horns are for like loud music,
which he says he loves, but there's a concert happening right in front of him. He doesn't seem to be paying that much attention.
It's also the only elf that has his dick out.
For real?
Yeah, just little here, and that's also to talk about the addictive power of masturbation, fleeing from the issues into addiction, trying to compensate something.
He's also small.
Yeah, well, you don't have to like addiction. Like it's not my whole life, you know. It's I hope not.
Are you addicted to painting?
I wish I was more addicted to
Yeah.
painting. It's a good thing to be addicted on because you produce something. You're not escaping. It's hard to sit and paint.
It's easy to sit and scroll on your phone,
Yeah,
or easy to sit and masturbate,
much easier.
or easy to sit and listen to music. But listening to music isn't making music.
You don't go anywhere. Just doing what this guy is doing. Everything he does is a bit of a waste of time. It's a black hole for the attention to sink into in order to stop feeling. Yeah.
All right.
So next we're gonna talk about this one. Amongst all of the other elves with personality and weird meanings behind them, this is the one that I identify with the most. But like
it's an
I see
auto-portrait
myself.
in a way.
Yeah.
And he's also interacting with the rainbow, unlike many of the other elves, specifically this one. But he's bringing the rainbow and giving it to others.
Yeah.
Which I guess is kind of the goal of this podcast in a way. And so who is this? You say all the elves have a big nose, but this guy doesn't have a big nose either.
Yeah, it's kind of a rival. It's not necessarily part of me, but it's more what takes place in my mind when I meet a person like that I'm in competition with. Yeah, it's other dudes. It's a little skater, a little bit demonic with a giant eye, and I'm trying to put the good vibes.
You're mirroring the rock and roll?
Yeah, because, well, dudes are my people. I'm like that.
And what's the meaning of the bunny going between the two of them amongst the rainbow?
It's about balance between the demons I see in other. I try to
soften them with a bunny.
Yeah, exactly. I try to put some balance in there to reason with myself that everyone's not bad. Everyone is not just bad. There is some good, there is some bunnies, there is some fluffiness inside of everyone. And it doesn't matter if I'm competing with you, if I'm not even aware of you. It doesn't matter if you're like a demon in my eyes. You still need to see the bunnies, the fluffy side into others. Because if you lose that touch...
They're just a demon.
Yeah.
You gotta kill them.
Yeah, exactly. When you start demonizing others, and when you lose sight of the humanity that they have within themselves that you don't necessarily hear about, that's when you really start going down the bad path. And dehumanizing
And he's not doing
others.
anything wrong, he's just skateboarding.
Yeah, of course. But some people really hate skateboarding. Right. Some people see skateboarding as...
He's wearing jean shorts as well.
Yeah,
that's very telling. And so this one is me, obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously. There's many different features that might make sense. This is a sock that your mum's friend knitted for me.
Yeah.
This character's wearing. There's a bit of lingerie and booty. There's a guitar. And there's my cut up arms. And a kitty. And I mean, that's all the meaning I need.
And yeah, your long, fluffy red hair. And yeah, the guitar. The guitar is real too. Like, you have a guitar looking just like this one. And
I also brought a lot of music into your life when we got together. We really shared our music taste.
And right next to you is a bit of a Viking. To me, that symbolizes travel. Because you come from Australia and you came here to France, it definitely feels like you traveled a long time. You come from a faraway land. And so, yeah, it's fun to symbolize that with a bit of a Viking.
I landed on these shores.
Yeah.
And I'm here to stay.
Right. Invader. The final elf,
which is...
She represents a friend. She has an interest in piano, and at some point she brought a dog in our place, and the dog found a saucisson in the cuisine, in the kitchen, and so I illustrated that
The
little
dog has the
events.
sausage in the mouth, and
Yeah,
it's really our friend personified
yeah,
in the corner.
pretty much.
We let her throw the die for her character.
Yeah,
And the fact that it turned out like this was kind of almost the signal to be like, time to work on something else.
yeah, pretty much.
Because she's not like anyone else.
Exactly.
She's not you. And she's not me.
Yeah, she's part of the others.
Yeah.
Just
All right.
quickly, like we have Hortense here, our little cat. We adopted her while I was painting this, so it was fun to draw her here. And now we can talk about the road, and it starts from nature, from the mushrooms, into this tiny little egg. Of course, I didn't come from an egg, and I'm not a duck, but
What?
all of the characters are still representations of me, and throughout multiple stages of my
This
life.
is the wackiest self-portrait I've ever looked at.
Thank you.
And I've seen Picasso.
Have you?
No, not really. A little bit.
So, what do you think about this road?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that it's kind of the road of life.
Yeah.
And it's your life. And you can kind of explain what's happening, I guess.
Yeah, a bit better than you.
Yeah.
Guess.
It's your life, not mine.
So, same as everyone, I was born, I was a kid, and I did stupid kid stuff. So,
Stupid?
not necessarily stupid, but like reckless. So, part of them was skateboarding. And I skateboarded up until one day I tried to do a figure, and ended up having a bad balance. The skateboard flew right behind me, and my face hit the asphalt real hard. So, as depicted here, I broke my 2 front teeth. I was 11 years old, and it marked me quite a bit because in some sense I thought I looked cool because the next day in school I had my fucked up teeth and my lip was all shredded and it looked like vampire teeth. And I was able to show that to all of my friends. It was fun.
Look, I'm so cool.
But I stopped doing skateboarding after that. It just like I was not ready for that ride again. I found other hobbies. The next little ducky is crying, not necessarily like I was gonna say like a bitch, but it's just crying, you know,
Crying
like,
at the loss of his fun hobby of skateboarding because he's too scared to do it now.
maybe, yeah, exactly. So I mentioned a bit earlier that I grew up sheltered, and that means like my father was not really like there. He was working every day, and because of that, it was my mom who raised me a lot of the times, and my mom was scared for me, and because of that, I didn't really go outside. I didn't really do dangerous stuff. It was like really a little sheltered, and because of the the events in my family, it was a bit of a rough time to grow up. Hence the little tears. It's an expression of sadness of a bit of a rough time in my childhood, and it marked
Not
me.
having a father that was there for you is kind of tragic. And I mean,
Yeah.
you were crying, and then you came, and your escape from crying was art. It was the thing you like to do, the thing that would take your mind off maybe the things that weren't working in your life.
So when I was 18, I moved on to another city, and I did art school, and I passed all of the anger I had in me, all of the sadness, all of the tragic that I was feeling in my life onto the paintings. It was cathartic, but it was also
Painful.
Yeah, painful, exactly.
You looked at the art you made and you felt the pain that you put into it.
Yeah, and it's also it's the other duck that's crying. This is more of a picture of like childhood, because at the time I was alone in the city and doing the same thing I was doing during my childhood, which is not going out much, just staying at home and not doing anything, and really not going anywhere. I spent all my time just doing video games, porn, and not going out of my house. That's all. So you can go from 20 to your grave and just do that, and nobody will hear about you. You will experience no joy in life, really. It's just fleeting. After a few years of that, I came back to my place of origin, to Brittany, and I found multiple things at once in the span of a few months.
A foot and a mushroom.
So this guy definitely is intrigued by the little mushroom he just picked up. And you come crashing into my life right at this point. It's not that I discovered your foot. I don't care. But it's yeah, it's you come here from a far distant land into my life, and it's like, whoa, that's amazing. I love that. So at the same time, you came here, I discovered mushroom, and we really connected on that. It was the time of my first trips. This little elf
The last
surrounded,
elf.
yeah, the last elf of the painting. It's surrounded by mushrooms. It's on a cross. It symbolizes the experience of rebirth in some sense, because psilocybin mushrooms will dissolve your ego, dissolve every sense of personality that you have, up until kind of your personality dies, your ego dies. It's not any kind of physical death. Your body is still completely functional, but you have no idea what you're doing here. Everything stopped making sense. And then at some point, it just clicks back on, and you are reborn. You are experiencing things as if it was the first time you ever saw them. It's a really powerful experience, and symbolized in this little elf.
In a sense, it's like the duck becomes a god for a moment. Maybe
Yeah.
all this is that.
Yeah.
You see?
Of course.
And then it turns
That's-
back into a duck.
Yeah, that's the huge power, and how much respect we should have for these kinds of experiences, because I am of the opinion that all religions, modern religions, spawned from the experience of the magic mushrooms, and it was lost, I don't know how, through the ages, and now we think God is some kind of intangible thing rotting away in a church, when really, take a big dose of psilocybin mushrooms and experience it yourself. You'll see if it's alive or not. After this experience, clearly the duck was changed. You come out of the experience looking a bit more like a mushroom, and the eyes are much, much brighter. It stops crying. It stops being...
Start smiling.
Yeah, start smiling. And you find the joy in life so much more potent than before. You stop wallowing in your little issues and problems. It's not that you forget the past, it's that you made your peace with it. And for someone with bad experiences, like in your memories, it can be such a help. From that point on, into the rest of the road that is life, with my little bucket of paint and my brush, I found...
And your expanded mind.
Yeah.
Your third eye.
I found a lot of meaning into my life going forward. And as someone who struggled a lot with suicidal thoughts for years of my life, finding the joy and the beauty of life is such a treat. It is such a joy. And thank God for mushroom. Really, I wouldn't be here without them.
Thank you for this amazing piece of art.
Thank you. Thank everyone. It's all about spreading the love, gratefulness, and life.
If someone was to take this, do you think they might understand that mushrooms changed your life just without even the story behind it, without hearing you tell them exactly
I
what it
think
means?
I think if they're already in contact with the experience, they might have all the keys to understand what's happening there. But I think it's useful to have my take, my words, explaining a bit of that,
I mean,
just so we have
if
the
I'm
keys.
trying to look at this with like virgin eyes, I see this duck, sadness, mushrooms, obviously mushrooms,
Mhm.
and then it's happy. So I kind of get that picture,
Yeah,
at least.
yeah.
But as for what it really means, like deeper
Well,
than that.
yeah. All kinds of spirituality is subjective, and you cannot get a true sense of it just by looking at a doodle on the paper. Like you gotta go through the journey yourself.
But there are artists that can give you. I remember
Of course.
you once showed a picture like this to a friend of ours, no, to the grandfather of a friend of ours, and he said it's like taking drugs. And
Yeah.
our friend was like, "How does Granddad know that? He's never taken drugs." You communicated the fact that you took drugs in your art.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, he lived through the 60s and
Oh, of course.
yeah, he saw some of that. The hippies.
I think ideally, I would like to see this painting in jigsaw puzzle form so that you can really get in contact with all the tiny little details, because
Yeah, that'd be
the
nice.
big characters are really quite imposing, while all alongside of it, there's little things happening, which are just almost as much fun to look at as the big guys.
Yeah.
Gives you something to think about.
Thank you for watching.
If you are interested, there'll be an episode 2 where I talk about my journey as a trans woman and how I found myself doing sex work.
We'll also talk about another painting of mine and the story behind it. So in the meantime,
Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Goodbye.